Welcome back, friends of the Ancient Kingdom, and welcome to this video that will discuss swordsmanship, specifically the strongest swords in the world of One Piece, the Saijo Ō Wazamono, so the swords in the possession of the greatest swordsmen and warriors in the manga. Let's begin our discussion on swords by focusing on Shimotsuki Kozaburo, an aging gentleman who left the island of Wano 55 years ago and headed to the East Blue. A particular statement he made caught my attention. He described swords as simply knives employed by assassins, but ones designed specifically for killing. Swordsmiths diligently craft these weapons with the sole purpose of enabling them to end as many lives as possible. So, the essence of a sword lies in its nature as a weapon. It is inherently created for the act of killing. The intriguing aspect of swords lies in their unique personalities. This fact is consistently relayed by Kozaburo, an authority in this matter. In wielding a sword, the swordsman must subdue its independent will. An apt comparison can be made with the wands in Harry Potter, which possess distinct personalities, inclinations, and temperaments. It falls upon the wizard to successfully channel and harness the wand's power for optimum use. Similarly, a sword judges its wielder's worthiness, and if it deems them unfit, it may actively resist being used as intended, even going as far as endeavoring to be discarded. And indeed, during the time of Thriller Bark Saga, Ryuma, or rather Ryuma's corpse with Brook's shadow, acknowledged Zoro's victory over him by declaring, "This is Shusui," as he handed the black sword to Zoro. He stated that the sword once belonged to a formidable samurai, and that Zoro, being of such caliber, would be able to wield it to its fullest potential. Throughout the story, it becomes increasingly evident that these swords possess a unique power. It is highly likely that it is the sword itself that determines its owner. With this in mind, let us continue the discussion and explore the different types of swords. Although we already have some knowledge of them, for the sake of completeness, let's create a quick list of the widely acclaimed and famous swords known as meito. The term meito in Japanese is formed by combining the kanji characters for na, meaning famous, and katana, meaning sword. Thus, meito refers to a renowned sword that possesses a name. Moreover, there exist various types of these swords which differ in terms of their overall quality, sharpness, and performance, ranging from absolute top-tier swords to first-rate, finely sharpened ones. This classification system enables us to categorize swords based on their quality. The Saijo Ō Wazamono category consists of swords that are considered of absolute quality, with Saijo signifying the best of the best, and Ō Wazamono denoting swords that possess exceptionally important qualities. Currently, only 4 swords in the world of One Piece hold this prestigious rank. These include the Murakumogiri, or Cutter of Cloud Clusters, the razor-sharp Bisento wielded by Newgate. Another one is Ace Sword, the legendary weapon of Gold Roger. We also have the Yoru Sword, known as the Knight, and famously wielded by Dracule Mihawk, the world's greatest swordsman. Lastly, there's the Shodai Kitetsu, the original demon slasher, which belongs to Venushiro, one of the 5 elders of the world government. In years, speculation has arisen about the nature of this sword due to its identical handle to both the Nidai and Sandai, which are the more recent swords from the same generation. This similarity had already led many to believe that the elder's sword was indeed the Shodai Kitetsu, further increasing its significance. Belonging instead to the first-rate swords, thus those one step below the Saijo Ō Wazamono, are the Ō Wazamono, among which stand out Wado Ichimonji, Shusui, Nidai Kitetsu, which is the one Luffy had taken from Sukiyaki during Volume 91, Enma, the King of the World of the Dead, the sword that was Odin's and is now in the hands of Zoro, and Ame no Abakiri, Slayer of Snakes, the other sword that belonged to Odin, now in the hands of Momonosuke, his son and current shogun of Wano country. Then we have the Ryo Wazamono, which are the high-quality sharp swords. This category includes Yubashiri, the sword that Zoro broke during the Enies Lobby battle, as well as Kashu, one of the swords that Tashigi retrieved from pirates all around the world. Moving down, we have the Wazamono, which are also sharp swords. A 4th category where we find swords which are good swords but not considered very fine. One example in this category is the Sandai Kitetsu, the 3rd-generation demon slasher. When a sword, any kind of sword, is wielded by its rightful owner in countless battles, as they repeatedly empower it with their haki with color of armament, it has the potential to transform into a black blade. In the past, before we discovered the art of Wano's Ryu, it was believed that swords like Mihawk's, which had a black blade, and Ryuma's, the famed Shusui, were crafted from a unique metal that imparted the darkness to their blades. However, we now understand that through the continuous assimilation of the owner's weapon-centric ambitions, a phenomenon known as kokuto, meaning black sword, can be triggered. In rare instances, exceptional swordsmen like Ryuma and Mihawk were able to permanently imbue their blades with darkness, elevating their power to new heights. Among the assortment of swords presented, there exists a subset classified as cursed. However, it must be emphasized, as Shimotsuki Kozaburo expertly points out, that a cursed sword is merely a renowned weapon, labeled as such due to the trepidation it instills in the faint-hearted. Its curse lies in its extraordinary effectiveness as a lethal implement. Therefore, it is critical to acknowledge that, at its core, a sword is designed to end lives. When a sword earns widespread recognition for its formidable history of casualties, it becomes known as a cursed blade. Yet, one must recognize that beneath the surface, these swords are simply extraordinarily lethal. Having done this brief and hopefully also interesting review of swords in One Piece, I would like to pass the ball to my friend Mala, because all this talk of Wazamono has a perfectly linear reference to the history of Japan.
When discussing swords, the origin is crucially important, particularly in reference to a Japanese manga. It's essential to consider that Oda must establish a connection with a previous sword evaluation system. Specifically, he reconnected with an evaluation system that already existed in Kaihō Kenjaku, an ancient Japanese book. This system categorized swords into two groups: Koto, Old Sword, and Shinto, New Sword, within four major families: Saijo Ō Wazamono, Ō Wazamono, Ryo Wazamono, and Wazamono. These four subdivisions, as you may observe, correlate exactly with those that Eiichiro Oda employed in the world of One Piece. Similarly, much like the classification system in the real world, renowned swords are ranked from the standard Wazamono tier to the esteemed status of Saijo Ō Wazamono. However, during feudal Japan, how were these swords ranked? Well, they were grouped based on their cutting ability and the sharpness of their blades. The classification did not consider the type of forging or the aesthetics of the sword. Instead, they were rigorously tested by executioners who traveled throughout Japan, executing the condemned. Through this method, the executioners would ascertain whether these swords were crafted with skillful workmanship, exceptional workmanship, fine workmanship, or whether they were simply ordinary swords. In Kaihō Kenjaku, a work that describes ancient swords, there were approximately 200 swords that were classified. These swords were divided into different categories based on their quality. There were 12 swords classified as Saijo Ō Wazamono, 21 as Ō Wazamono, 50 as Ryo Wazamono, and 80 as Wazamono. Interestingly, these same classifications were used by Oda in the One Piece universe to depict the Wazamono swords. However, the question remains: how were the sharpness of these blades tested? Surprisingly, the method was quite simple. The swords were tested by cutting through both living and deceased bodies with a single sharp blow in a vertical manner. The number of bodies the sword could cut through determined its classification within a particular family of swords. If a sword were to be included in the Wazamono, it would possess the capability to skillfully sever a body at the level of the hip line. The choice of targeting the hip line rather than the neck is due to the fact that the neck, being composed of bones, has a much smaller circumference. On the contrary, the pelvis area, unless struck precisely at the location of the bones, is primarily hollow. Essential organs are found within this area, as well as sections where bones must be severed, specifically the point where the spine initiates. In contrast to the neck, there is greater spacing between individual spinal bones in this region, avoiding entanglement of the blade between adjacent bones. Consequently, focusing on the pelvis region instead of the cervical portion is proven to be a more favorable approach. In order to achieve the Ryo Wazamono classification, one must possess the ability to simultaneously cut through two bodies stacked on top of each other. To attain the Ō Wazamono status, 3 bodies need to be sliced, one atop the other, and for the prestigious Saijo Ō Wazamono rank, 4 bodies are required to be severed. It is evident that to execute a clean cut with sheer force, the rotation of the blade needs to be substantial. Imagine the difficulty involved in slicing through 4 bodies at once. It necessitates an exceptional degree of sharpening, one that is truly exaggerated. In actuality, only a dozen blades in existence possess such caliber. Furthermore, in subsequent revisions following Kaihō Kenjaku, blades were added, but they were ranked below Saijo Ō Wazamono class. This adjustment was made due to the immense challenge posed by 4 body cuts. There is another interesting detail that I would like to mention. I happened to come across it on a specialized website dedicated to Japanese swords and the different degrees of sharpness they possess. It is worth noting that the Saijo Ō Wazamono swords were not tested on ordinary criminals, such as muggers or petty thieves. Instead, they were specifically tested on murderers and other serious offenders. This is because it is believed that the soul of the person killed by a sword will forever reside within the sword itself. And so, it is important to understand that a sword crafted with the utmost skill and precision cannot in any way tolerate or accommodate a spirit of meager worth or quality. In fact, the individual who forges such a sword cannot allow a soul of such a low stature to inhabit its blade. Hence, it is crucial for him to enlist the services of an expert sword assayer or a top executioner for testing the sword and choose those individuals who truly merit death by his swords. By doing so, only the souls of these particular individuals will be granted sanctuary within the sword, while the souls of insignificant people, individuals who have merely committed inconsequential and minor offenses, shall be excluded.
Now that we have gained a much clearer comprehension of the reasons behind the grading of these swords, it is evident to us that their grading system is solely based on their cutting proficiency. Therefore, the sword's rank is determined by its ability to cut through people, objects and things, with higher ranks being granted to those that are sharper and more efficient at cutting. In the expansive world of One Piece, a mere dozen swords have managed to meet the demanding evaluation criteria. These revered blades encompass Yoru, owned by the formidable Dracula Mihawk; Murakumogiri, wielded by the renowned Edward Whitebeard Newgate; Ace, associated with the legendary Gol D. Roger; and Shodai Kitetsu, possessed by the formidable Ethan Baron V. Nusjuro. However, find the remaining 8 swords is no trivial task. Without a reliable benchmark, identifying which blades possess the remarkable ability to effortlessly slice through 4 individuals proves to be an immensely challenging endeavor. Perhaps the one I could consider at this time is undoubtedly Ryu, belonging to Shiryu. The reason for this speculation is simply based on logical deduction. Zoro will most likely confront Shiryu, thereby necessitating a face-off between 2 legendary swords. An encounter with a supreme blade like Saijo Ō Wazamono will undeniably enhance Zoro's prestige as he aspires to become the ultimate and most renowned swordsman in the whole world. For me, this is currently the only sword that we can safely assume belongs to this particular group. It is quite difficult, in fact very difficult, to suggest that the others could be part of this group, at least at first glance. Maybe Shanks and his Griffon, but is only a speculation. Of course, there is a possibility that more swords could come up in the future, but as far as I think, it is possible that Oda may never reveal the remaining swords that are missing to complete these groups. Ultimately, it may not be important to know the exact number of swords in this group. Maybe it's information that he could give us in a databook, in a vivre card, in an SBS, but I think it's complicated for him to show us the remaining 8 swords within the manga, unless they belong to a past time, and then they can appear, for example, in a flashback or in the ancient flashback where we're going to find out the past history. With that being said, my friend Mala and I are here to say goodbye to all of you. We sincerely hope that we have been able to provide you with some truly intriguing and captivating content. Remember to stay kind and enjoy every moment. Goodbye.